Hi, everybody. We have a couple of questions, and always happy to have more and more questions coming in. So if you've not forgotten how to write and your brain is functional,
You're so subtle.
Marlene said I'm so subtle. If you think of a question, jot it down and send it in. Really appreciate it. This one is from Carol Martin, and it aligns with a lot of thoughts on a whole lot of things. If some of you who have been listening to these podcasts remember the question that Toshi was talking about last week and the answer that I was attempting to give. And Carol comes up with this question, and it's a legitimate question. She says, if I ease off the throttle and try and relate this to yourselves the best you can, I don't feel sincere. In other words, if she eases off how her natural inclination is, and as I was talking about previously, learning how to attempt to soften down and engage slightly differently than you have been, she doesn't feel sincere, and that comes with the territory. It's very fascinating. And in the last 6 months, she says, I've seen particularly, it seems particularly daunting. I can't honestly ease off on some of the reactions, though I sometimes try to fake it till I make it. Should I be sincere or quiet? Well said. It's very fascinating. We live our whole lives as an energy form, of course, not knowing that we have these tremendously, very fascinating, intense moments, and they flash away from us. They can be out there 15, 20 feet for a few seconds and drop back again. It's as if out of these personality constructs come these themic type of responses that relates to actually the protection of ourselves and how we have done that, whether the protection is necessary or not. Our responses are legitimately there, hear that part, legitimately there, based on how we have constructed ourselves from the time of our birth. Now, this is a dilemma because we, unknown to us, are like sponges when we're young. I can't say that it's totally photographic, but we copy from our parental background and others too. We copy our version of how a person acts, and they seem to get value from acting that way, and we copy those things. So they become a legitimate method of engaging with life within ourselves. Unknown to us, we're creating images of ourselves and how we should be if we're going to be an adult. And we move towards adulthood. It's quite fascinating. Yes, we do think from time to time. Yes, we have physical internal responses, and we kind of seal those responses in a protective manner based on what we think we have to do to be valued under the circumstances of a particular pod of personalities. And that pod is often called family background. It could be friends at school. It could be anything. Because we do quite an interesting job unknowingly, reflexively, because it is the nature of how human beings engage to become functional enough to help themselves to survive, one could say, or to fit a way of being that seems to be at large, relatively speaking, in our small pods or family background, of value to the pod. Now, this can be extended to groups of friends and just groups of people who are in agreement with us or not in agreement with us, or learning how just to survive. Survive a way of engaging that is different than ours, whatever that may be. But these tremendous responses have an effect external from us because the intensity is expressed quite firmly, reflexively. And we may not, if we're used to them, even notice them. We may not even be able to define them as anything that would be something that shouldn't happen, because we're already defined and over and over and over redefined by us. There are given circumstances that exacerbate those needs to be refined on that basis, and then we have a very difficult time even considering the possibility that the way we act could be more respectful, for example, if we could find that particular way. Not a bit of wonder that we think we're not sincere if we don't act the way we have been involved with acting for most of our life. This is a very difficult area. Each and every one of us has periods of time when we face those constantly, and we can't perceive them. And we have these inner responses that usually dictate that we should respond in a particular way externally, because that is protecting ourselves relative to how we have trained ourselves. It's often very difficult to explain that, but we all have had experiences related to this. If we can allow ourselves to understand that this is not a devaluation of this kind of thing, it's an evaluation that comes from you as you perceive a little bit more. And it's a place of recognition and hopefully ultimately a sensitivity to understanding, to an allowance that will allow you to understand slightly differently than you have basically been trained to understand things or respond to them. This is not a negative thing. This is what each of us has. 8 billion people do the same thing, so can't say that it's bad or good, it's right or wrong. You can say, if you have the willingness to soften it down, you will begin to see you from a different perspective. No negation involved there. But if you're used to judging other people, you will start to judge yourself. And that is not respectful to you. However, anytime that you start perceiving these things, it makes you more sensitive to them if you will allow that to be. Now, look, I got to be honest about this thing. As you begin to perceive them, you will protect unknowingly how you were before by coming up with something either positive or negative towards you caught it and it's no longer in you, that kind of thing. It's not real. It's there. And under very difficult circumstances, it will come back again because it's trained to be there. And it can be helpful under some very acute circumstance. There's, of course, deniability on each of our parts as human beings by saying, this really should have been like this because. And until you see through that deniability, it will continue to be there. And that is the nature of how we operate here on this planet. Increased perception is something that's quite interesting. You get to know it, but you also get to know how difficult it is, as Carol was saying, how difficult it is, because she feels insincere to herself. If you have an image of yourself, think about this, everybody. If you have an image of yourself, there is a sense of insecurity or insincerity when you are attempting to do something different than what you have done previously consistently. I don't care what it is. That little piece there is there because you are perceiving more than you could before. It's not that it's insincere. It's, in a kind of way, you could speculate that you're perceiving more. Therefore, you're seeing more, which includes wanting to get back into the same basket that you've been in before. This is legitimate. This is how it does work. Trying to be helpful to yourself in a natural way. You could ask for healing for it, or you could dialogue yourself. Try to calm you down through dialogue. And it's not about then insincerity. It's about you recognizing that your favorite go-to is hard to let go of. And you can't let go of it all because that will remain, but you'll see it better. And when it does, you can soften it down by attempting to understand the great need that we all have to be seen in the same way as we've been seen before. This, in a way, is not real. It's a copying of images that have been constructed. People are not always one way versus another, and they never are. But you will see the ones that help you to value you better from your perspective. You will see them better than any others. And if that is an intensity that relates to attempting to maintain a particular way of being, then that's what it is. It will be that way. Not because you're a bad person, it's because the training is from the time of your birth through these younger ages. You have watched others do this kind of thing, and it was valuable to them, therefore it must be valuable. And now you do it relative to you. That's not the only way it happens. It can also happen because of great vulnerability internally, and therefore very much frustration at your vulnerability. And in growing, vulnerability does show up, especially when you're dealing with images that you have been protecting without your knowledge. Images that makes you feel comfortable and comforted by using all the implementations that are possible to maintain them. That is not a negative thing. That's what happens. So to reflect on these things in a relative kindly way is a little bit difficult, because at the same time that you're reflecting, you're automatically coming up with reasons why, whatever those staid and true ways that make you feel comforted when you're vulnerable should be maintained. And this is consistent. Everyone suffers through these things. So, I think that question is a most interesting question, because it does affect us all. And I'm not sure if I added anything to this, Carol, if you, let me just look over my notes here for a second. I may have written something down that I haven't. I say go slow and see those things if you can allow yourself to. And be curious about why you might use those responses as primary responses, if you can find primary responses. Usually the ones that make you feel the most insecure will be some of those primary responses. See if you can soften them down a little bit, but go slow with them. Know that they will come back. Know that for sure, because of the sense of vulnerability that's there if you don't use them. Act as if what you see is someone else. And you can do the life map on these things when you do that. It's like you're watching a big landscape. And we have a number of years under our plate, one could say. And those years have packed in substance that align with an engagement with life that needs to be helped, reviewed, maintained, because they are mainstays in how we see the world that make us feel right or comforted or legitimate, regardless of whether they're real or not. Yeah, they may not be as real or necessary in every case. You'll find places where you will say that they are real and they are necessary. You will do that because that will be the protection that we all have in relationship to being accepted by us in the world of everyone. This is natural. Try not to beat yourself up about this, because we're learning. So you learn slowly and you understand deeper when you learn slowly. Many can say, oh, that's all changed. It'll never be anything else. It's not real. It'll go slow. You'll see things where there is change. You'll see things where there's not so much. You'll justify those things. Soften the justifications. Okay, that may be okay, but maybe not. But still collecting value related to images. And we all have them, remember. It's not something that one person does, it's something that everyone does. You can use the life map as a healing tool, asking for help from a higher state. And two things can happen. You see more carefully of the self and the self-judgment or the judgment of others, or the self-satisfaction. Sorry, why am I having trouble with that word? Satisfaction. Number two, it will soften, but any responses in your direction will bring back those same defensive structures, responses that you believe are aligned with the reflex that expresses itself. If you remember, we were talking about those reflexes last Thursday, where they get, let's say, deeper, used more often, and they become stronger and therefore more reflexive, faster reflexes than the ones that have not been used as often. That's one way of finding out which ones you depend on. It might be helpful. Just maybe think about it. While doing this, you'll notice that there is a pause even when you're doing the life map on something, or trying to talk yourself down a little bit. Okay, what's going on here? Why are my reflexes so strong? Oh yeah, this is how I normally do things. And that pause literally helps you to become more able to perceive gently. And even a simple mantra like saying, easy, I could say, easy, Ron, easy, it's okay. Easy, what's going on here? That kind of simplistic thing gives you a pause. If you can allow it, it is really helpful. It's not about beating yourself up or striking out. It's about, whoa, just a minute now. So that's what happens. This is what's okay. And you're learning as you do that. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that might be, just keep in mind that these things are engaged with and taken on unknowingly. This is not something you reach out there and you say, now I'm going to be like this and now I'm going to be like that. This is when the intensity is really strong. These things come up as if you're doing that on purpose, but the reflexes, they're faster and they're out there very quickly because they've been used before and they know how to do that. And you'll find also that it's almost as if you're run by them, not you using them. It's a very strange feeling. Once your sensitivity gets stronger, you'll say, my God, where did that come from? And it may have come into you from a different place. Maybe others that you're engaging with. Maybe not. Maybe they had a reaction, stimulated yours. It's possible, but you're still responsible for your own. Yeah. That doesn't sound very good, but nonetheless, I guess, if they come out of your mouth, I guess that's the way it is. Same for everybody. Just in case you're thinking, anyone out there is thinking that you're the only ones that have these kinds of things happen, be assured you are not. You may not see them the same way in others, but they are not in charge of those things necessarily, because they're reactive and they're engaging in anticipation of their discomfort. But it is there, and the same is going on for us. To see it and try to understand it and be as gentle as you can, feeling sincere or not, is to be helpful to you. That pressure of the inner training is extremely strong, but it's not there to be perfected, and it's not perfect, because your responses may be relative to your perception, and your perception is not perfect. In spite of what you may think, you can misperceive what's going on very easily. And that includes engaging with others. And that also includes self-protection of your own self-protection. So, very fascinating, interesting question, but a valuable one. So, I hope if you tie these two things together with the last meeting that we had, then you can make some sense, a little bit better sense of the understanding of you as an energy being, utilizing emotional intensity, physical engagement. These things are not separate, as I said before. They work with each other. Mental reactions and a feasible, legitimate way of acting relative to these planes on this planet. And then you're looking at it and wondering how that really works in you. And is it okay? Yes, sure, it's fine. Millions of people are acting the same as you are. But if you can shift that a little bit, you will become more sensitive and more perceptive, not only about others, but about yourself. And you'll begin to understand that others have a very difficult time engaging, just like you, in a manner that they would consider uncomfortable. In other words, any kind of change creates a discomfort. And change itself allows you to perceive that which you did before and that which you do differently right now, increasing your perception to include others and realize that they can be the same way without even knowing that they're the same way as they have been for the last 30, 40 years. To have compassion for that is to begin to have compassion for yourself, because you know how difficult that is to shift. And that is a wonderful learning tool in relationship to life. I have another question here. This one is from Laurie Delaplante. Normally, I think there should always, be a pause between questions, which I never take. I apologize for that. So that you can have an idea, a moment or two to think about, to see if there's any way that what we're talking about might fit or make sense to you. in the broadening of your understanding of others and yourself. This won't be perfect because you will feel strange sometimes if you catch yourself doing exactly the same thing as you've done forever and you believe that you've already dealt with that. Be okay with that. And that's why slow seems to be a very important thing. Slow and easy, and try to recognize that life is a relationship, not only with others, but within yourself. A relationship is a very big word. We seldom communicate with ourselves. Legitimately, we attempt it, but as if the way we are is more valuable than, and how you see it is more valuable than how others might see it. And in essence, it's kind of true. And it's partially false. Others may see you in places that you can't see yourself. But they're seeing you through their view screen. And that is affected by how they engage with the world and have been trained to express themselves externally towards the world in an assessment fashion or judgment fashion. And they believe that they're more right. In fact, that may not be true. But a thought, just a thought, you do the same thing. And in finding out you do the same thing, it leaves a door open to consider the possibility that you see things relative to how you've been trained to see them by you in alignment with your past podding systems, grouping systems, and you have reached the phase in adult life where you can begin to understand that people can be seen from all different angles, depending on who they're protecting. If they are protecting themselves, they will see a person from an angle that protects them in relationship to a value that is placed on them. This is the same for all of us. Understand that, and then you'll begin to understand that you are a human being rather than an exclusive right person in view of others, because you cannot see you being you very well. And this goes for everybody. You will be quite content with the appraisal, naturally and normally, that you come up with in relationship to your own self-interest. It's the norm here. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, except you are more than that, precious in that. As an energy being, you're playing a song inside, a tune, a tone that relates to an energetic expression that is valued from a particular stiffer point of view. And that's the only way we can see it very well, because we are physical beings and we relate directly to the physical plane. Yes, the emotional aspect and its responses to these planes, and the mental facilities that we have in relationship to the nervous system and the brain. And we function this way. And we try to make sense of it all. And we're still trying to make sense of it all. But there's more. And from my perspective, you can call on that more, that flow, to give you a hand with this. I know everybody doesn't believe in that stuff, but as you become more aware of that flow inside of you, you begin to recognize your relationship with it, at least to the degree that you've read books about it, to the degree that your experience is involved with it, and moderation of some of those ideas that you've picked up, and the great attempt that we all have to make some sense personally about what's going on in our own systems. Generally speaking, we are all alive because that energy is flowing in us. If we can remind ourselves of that, then we can begin to understand that we utilize, it's a strange word, that energy for our purposes relative to what we have learned we need to be like to be of some value to someone or others, including ourselves. And we hold that purpose to be the purposes of our reality. And those purposes are young, but they are not negative. They're just young. So we must protect them, right? No matter what they may be, as valuable. Otherwise, what do we be doing all our lives? Everything's ridiculous, but that's not true. Everything leads you to now. And what you do now leads you to tomorrow. And so many different kinds of tomorrows for each and every person. And an understanding that may be a little bit beyond what we want to allow, but nonetheless, it's a broadening of sorts. That's as an energy being. Lori's question is, when using a mantra or other strategies to help calm down mental chatter and emotional reactivity, how do you discern when doing so is constructive for your personal and spiritual growth versus when you may be subconsciously using them to protect from connecting with pain or upsetting thoughts and feelings? Well, it's a very interesting thing. I'll try to keep this one as short as possible. We have about 10 minutes or so. This is a dilemma. Mantras, meditations, prayer, soft music, thinking about higher states, all of these things are there to enable the frequencies in your physical, emotional, and mental systems to become less beta focused. In other words, to become more in the alpha range. How could I say that as an example? From stop being a roar to becoming a gentle hum. A hum meaning you're relaxing and letting go. We are trained not to do that. We have a Puritanistic background in the West, especially in North America. And our focus primarily is on making every second of our existence count. We're quite proud if we don't sleep and we activate the doing of something. We're quite proud if we do hard work. And we're quite proud of our engagement with being valued as vital in some way. And this comes out of a kind of teaching that says, don't let anything, any moment go by when you're not intensifying really strongly to be valued by others, and perhaps even valued by yourself in your own internal training about how important you would be if you make things count, make more money, become classically spiritual, classically anything. It's a concept that isn't all over the world, because in Eastern, past Eastern features, the idea of engaging with a gentler flow was involved with the idea of being involved with a higher state. If we have intensity in us, it's because a higher state can be intense too. It can follow along any avenue that you may take to give you more juice so you can do it more and figure out that that's not very helpful to you. However, we don't quite see it that way either. We do a logical thing. And one of the things is, what do I do if I become really glowing in a very wonderful, happy, joyful manner? What do I do with my normal job? Or how do I understand something that's out of whack with what certainly must be true because everybody else is doing it? And what am I worth? Well, here's one way to look at it. Your worth is not gained by what other people think you are, except when you value yourself because of what other people think you are. And that is a legitimate thing. That's what we do here. We want other people to know how wonderful we are. So we tell them. And that way they'll know. Well, bad news for you. Other people are more concerned about how able they are. They're not that concerned about you and how able you want to be or you want them to think you are. Yeah, that's one way. If you were doing mentors 24 hours a day, for example, and you became proud of doing mentors or saying prayers or being good at meditation or, all the music in the whole universe, all the good stuff, whatever that meant to you, you would still be ingratiating yourself. That's how we pull it together. It's what we do. It's a dilemma. Because if your focus is only on you, especially if you're increasing in awareness relative to your physical form, the intensity that you place on that awareness is going to be strongly affixed to you. Energy will come in strong. Until you understand that that's not quite it. It can come in and flow through you like a very beautiful summer wind. Beautiful, lovingly. Almost to the point where you can hardly bear the love of it. It's better you keep that quiet. Because if you start expressing it, it gets more intense. Or it might disappear. Why would it disappear? Because your focus is on you. So it may give you more of a focus on you. It's not a logical thing. It's kind of logical if you can understand it, but it doesn't unite very well with the construct of a personality's view or definition of what should be or shouldn't be when you are engaged with those higher states. But it's always purposeful, and the purpose is always related to the higher state, meaning it will come in and help you to understand you relative to you making sense of you differently than you could before. And that is a very loving thing to do, helping you to see how you use that energy for the purpose that relates to you. It's a principle that is very difficult to make sense of if you don't want to. Easy to make sense of if you can see it. But since we're all human beings, we would rather have it, at least initially, first couple of thousand years maybe, relative to how we comfort ourselves, whatever that means to us. And slowly understanding something. The business of meditation and mantras or prayer is to focus off of the you that you are presenting, that you need value-added engagement for, more attention for. This is how we normally function, and we are trained to function this way. We're not trained to take the focus off of the value that we add to ourselves for doing something. But if you're a really good painter, paint well. If you're really good, you name it, do that well. Through those things, you will become more aware of energy, because your sincerity, so-called, is related to the doing. No disrespect to anybody. We're not trained that way very well. That's why creative geniuses, for example, often have no idea what to do with their lives. They're too busy doing the doing thing of their worth, because it's as if they are still learning even when they're so great and so able. Learning becomes more important. And often they're not even recognized until much later in life, if not ever. This question of connection with painful and upsetting thoughts and feelings, you get to see them through a filter, much clearer and with more understanding and recognition than what you ever had before. You cannot perceive them clearly. Oh, you can do a surface thing on them, and you can learn how to do that, and that is good. And it is therapeutic. I would agree with that. But this stuff doesn't take away your awareness of those things. It increases your awareness of them. It just softens down your need to suffer. If you have a great need to suffer, you should not meditate. You should not do mantras. You shouldn't pray about it. You shouldn't listen to soft music that helps you to soften down the intensity that you have. That's the most unfair thing I think I've ever said. I really think you should do those things under those circumstances, so you eventually can see and understand those things, even though they're still there. And it will help you to have them there less, except when the time is more acute. This happens for that reason, and my gosh, it's true. This is the real reason why that happens. Wow, I never understood that as well. It doesn't slow down your mental acuity or your ability to perceive or your ability to understand. But it does slow down, softens down the pain a bit. Unless you really think you need to feel the pain to make sure that you notice something. Then that's a path that many people are on. And I think it can be there because things can be painful and upsetting thoughts can occur. Hopefully that helped a little bit, Laurie. And I wish you well with that one. It's a well thought out question. I understand the dilemma with it. And now I think what we'll do is we'll do some meditating. Last Thursday, I apologize. What happened was I turned off the sound myself. So for any of you that didn't hear any music, that was my doing. I often, if I haven't told you before, I often look to turn the sound off when I'm finished at doing something, and this was not a good thing, especially in relationship to trying to hear music. So I will turn off the visual screen, wish everybody well, and we'll meditate for roughly about an hour. Good night. And now we'll just do the balancing and grounding on your own, and have a good evening.